We just wanted to say on behalf of Dynamic Body Tech, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to finally get to chat to you. I've obviously heard quite a bit about you from Mark, but our audience hasn't yet. So I would love for you to give a little introduction as to who you are and what you do, and tell us a bit about yourself.
Cool. I'm Simon Brown. Largely, I teach people about money. I run a website, justonelap.com. But I'm active on Twitter. I've got podcasts, I've got TV shows, columns, and the like. And it really is sort of dispelling what's happening with money in markets, because none of it is rocket science, but we've never been taught any of it. So I sort of focus on that part. And although a lot of what I do might not be direct teaching in a sense, just by interviewing CEOs and traders and stuff like that, people are learning and just getting smarter on everything from personal finance through to investing, and ultimately, if they want to try their hand, trading.
That's awesome. That's amazing. And it's true. I mean, even if it's not a formalized, I guess, education in a way that you interact with people and the way that you can inform businesses on how to make better financial choices, that's education in itself. And yeah, I mean, I'm a teacher, so I truly believe that education is very important.
You're a proper teacher.
Yeah. I'm currently sitting in the staff room, actually. So, but that's amazing, Simon. Thank you. We're just so excited to get this opportunity, because obviously you're a very, very much an expert in your field. So we're just really excited about this chat that we're going to have. So, as you know, our topic for today is the 5 craziest financial mistakes that people make. Maybe common mistakes, maybe ones that aren't so common. And I know I have a couple that I can think of that I think are just things that blow my mind that people still do or don't do, in terms of their finances in the current day. But as the expert here, I want you to tell us a bit about what you think. What do you think these mistakes, where do they come from? What are they?
Well, I mean, top of list, and I put this one top because people hate me when I say it. Buying a house. I think buying a house is an absolutely terrible idea. And it's another logic. You rent and you pay someone else's bond. Sure, you do. But also you can typically rent for cheaper. But it's more than just that. It's the cost of maintenance of the house. When the geyser bursts, if you're an owner, now you've got to shell out for it. You can't just phone the landlord. It's cost of the transaction of buying and selling. When you buy a house, there's all the lawyer fees, there's transfer costs, depending on the price. So, and if the house is below $1 million, I think it's 900,000, there's no tax and transfer fees to be paid, but certainly there's transfer fees.
Yeah.
When you're selling, you're going to pay an agent. I mean, maybe if you're lucky, 5% plus VAT. I mean, these are huge fees that come into the process. And part of the problem is the average South African only owns a house, and they never own it, right? Because they have a bank loan. The bank owns it, but whatever. They only own it for 7 years, which means every 7 years we're going through this process where on the sell side, we pay the agent. On the purchasing side, we pay taxes and lawyers and all the rest. So huge expenses are being incurred. And there have been points where properties performed very well. I'm thinking predominantly the lead up to the collapse in 2008, 2009. But on average, if you run the numbers, and we've done it, and we've got the spreadsheet on our website, the cost of ownership is prohibitive, and people should just not be owning a house. Now, that all said, I must caveat it by saying I own my apartment, but I'd have 2 caveats to it. One is I own it. I paid for it. There's no bond on it. And second, my wife likes the security of owning a place. As long as we can pay our rates, then we've got somewhere to live. Now, I say we could go live in my sister's basement, but that wouldn't be quite the same. But globally, there's this idea that we need to that it's almost a badge of adulthood that you must buy a property and live in it. And the truth is no. And a quick last point on it is that we always think that we're going to buy the good property and we're going to get the deal and everything's going to be great. That's just not true. It's just not our skill set. We're all skilled in something, be that whatever. buying and selling and identifying good properties is not it. And just in the last 2 weeks, I've heard from friends who've both had disasters with properties they've bought. They've both managed to sell, and they've both managed in the process to lose a couple $100,000 on what's supposedly this really, really great asset.
Yeah, that's actually really true. It's a very good point. I've never thought about it like that. I've never thought of housing as such a, I mean, I know obviously it's expensive and it's a huge financial responsibility, but that's a very interesting take on it. And I'm glad you've told me this because that's pretty informative. I actually want to go onto your website and look at those statistics, all the numbers with buyers and sellers, because it is, I mean, in today's world, especially how the world's developed over the last few years, so few people actually have that extra money on top of the initial price of a house. So few people have that extra money to, I don't want to say to waste, but it is, it's going to things external to the actual house. And that's actually quite terrifying. I didn't realize there were so many odds and ends, and that's quite intense.
There is, and you put yourself at risk with interest rates going up. So every 0.25% interest rate goes up, costs about 150 Rand per million Rand bond. Yeah, it's not a lot, but we've already had two.
Yeah.
We might have another 4. Suddenly that's an extra 1,000 Rand. So you put yourself at that risk. And I know if you're renting, they can pass that through to a degree, but not absolutely. You also tie yourself down. What happens if a great job opportunity opens up and I don't know, at the beach or something like that? Yeah. Now, one of your big decisions is, well, I've got to now, sell and rebuy and incur cost, and maybe the company offering you the job will cover some of those costs, but it gives you, it's less sort of freedom in terms of choices. And then, of course, there's always just that, I'm old enough to remember Hillbrow in the 80s when it was a fascinating, exciting, vibrant place. And people bought there. And I mean, if you've still got a place in Hillbrow, you're not living in a fun environment.
Exactly. That's actually so interesting. Wow, I can't believe I've never thought about this before. Often I have to such a limited extent, if that makes sense. I've thought about obviously the differences between renting a house or buying a house and the way that it changes, but I've never thought about all of those details because for as long as I've been alive, we've lived in a house that we have bought. I mean, it's still being paid off. It's still, that's just the reality. And that's quite a mission. It's quite a commitment.
Yeah.
It's a lifelong commitment.
It is.
Yeah.
And it is that, as I said, we kind of barrel into it. We kind of see it as a badge of adulthood. And we don't stop and say, but hang on a second, do I really want to? I mean, the far extreme, and partly why we own this apartment here is, we're talking about buying, we're talking about renting. What about living in Airbnb? We live in the future now with Zoom and all of that sort of thing. I got a friend who's off to Spain to Madrid for 3 months. She's actually not using an Airbnb, but she's going to be renting a place for 400 euros per month, which is about 7,000 Rand. It's that freedom that we have. Now, I appreciate pets, jobs, all of those sort of things, might make that are not viable. But it just the idea that we've got to own a place and that's how it works. And no, terrible idea.
Actually, really true. It's true. And you're right in saying that because there's also this perception about renting, as you said earlier, that people say, yeah, but you're paying someone else's bond for them. You're paying, but it's more than that. If it works for you and it works for your finances and your financial abilities at that time, it makes so much more sense, especially as you said, the world's changing so quickly. And we've seen it with the pandemic, how many people have just lost their jobs and found work elsewhere, whether it be in another city, in another country. And that's everywhere. That's not even just South Africa, so it's very much something to consider. I'm so glad we're having this conversation because that's going to be my life for the next few months is looking at moving. And so very good timing.
Of course, first prize is live with your parents, if you can stand your parents, because that's cheap. I mean, I'm a cheapskate in heart. But I mean, at some point, the parents are going to change the locks. And
exactly. It gets to the point
it's not a long-term
move on. Yeah. No, it's very good to learn about this kind of thing. I'm so glad. I would never have thought of that as a financial mistake. And now That was amazing. I really hope our viewers are taking this in because it's very informative. I also have like a couple of things, but I want to hear yours first, so that we don't overlap. So tell me, what other crazy financial mistakes have you witnessed or heard of?
So another crazy mistake is we all think more money solves our money problems. We think that whatever we're earning now, it's not enough. And if we just got an extra 20% from our boss or a better job or won the lotto or something like that, we always just think that more money solves our money problems. And that's not true at all. If you are bad with money and you earn 10,000 Rand a month and now you suddenly earn 50,000 Rand a month, you're not going to find it any easier because at the core of it, you're still bad with money. You're just now bad on a 5x type of scale, and you will quickly grow your life and lifestyle creep into that extra money. So, whilst we always think that it's more cash, problems are solved. If we're struggling with money, and I appreciate that there are a lot of people who don't earn much, a lot of people who don't earn what I would consider to be a living wage in South Africa, which I think is probably around 15,000 Rand. I get all of that part of the component, but it's a sense of, if we've got money problems, the problem is the managing of it. The problem is not, how much money do we have. It's how we manage debt. It's how we manage savings. It's all of those sort of things which are the true actual heart of the issue, rather than saying, give me a lotto. And the stats are 75% of people who win a large amount of money in the lotto typically don't have anything left within 5 years. Exactly. Because they don't have that skill set. They don't know what to do with it. They don't know how to manage it. They go out and buy fancy things. And don't get me wrong, I would have loved to have won the lotto on Friday. What, plus 100 million? That would certainly have been sweet. But our money problems are not by money. And it's a hard reality. Money problems are because of us, and we need to fix and solve that to make it really work.
Exactly. It's actually a very interesting point, because I'm going to tell you what mine were now, because it actually relates completely to what you just said. One of the most important things is being obviously financially responsible, but I think that that's twofold. Okay. Because obviously the first thing, as you said, is we can't manage money, regardless of how much money we're earning. If you don't know how to manage that money, how to budget, how to balance all your incomes, expenses, and ensure that you're, I guess, going to be able to live in a way that's comfortable, then what is the point of earning anything? But that whole thing, it all comes again all from education, or from being informed and from learning about how to do these things. Again, as you said, it's not a rocket science. It's not something people are like innately taught when they're in school, or yes, some people will go on to study it at university, but still it's that's not everybody, and I think that I said one of the most crazy mistakes that still happens today is the fact that people don't know, or don't try to learn more about how to manage their finances. People go out into the world and get these fantastic jobs and amazing opportunities, but don't take the time to sit and say, okay, cool, this is what I have to achieve. This is what the tools that I'm being given to achieve them, as in their income or whatever it may be. What is the best way forward to make sure that I'm successful? It blows my mind that so many people don't know how to budget things, or how to just work with what they have. That's something I've been doing since I was 16. So for me, it's become just a natural part of my human being, trying to make the best of what I've got, and working around that kind of thing. And I don't know, it freaks me out that so many people don't know how to manage their finances. But I think it's more than that, because I also think that this problem lies in a lot of businesses, that in the current day, with everything that's going on, with everything that people are going through, I think that business leaders and heads of these big corporates should be implementing some sort of, not necessarily a financial wellness scheme, but just some sort of, be it a workshop or a seminar or some sort of, contract, anything that will help educate their staff and inform their staff of the best ways to manage their finances, because I'm sure, at Dynamic Body Technology, we deal a lot with corporate wellness, and part of corporate wellness is financial wellness. And if a business isn't looking out for their employees, a business can't be successful, so it's this whole, I'm going to keep talking if I don't stop myself.
I think you're right. And that that brings me to my third point. But, you were taught, you've been doing it since 16, which meant either someone taught you or you were a 16-year-old different from many other 16-year-olds, and you went and you hunted out the information and took it to heart. We aren't being taught. We aren't being taught by our family when we're young. And that's not dissing our family, because they weren't taught. They weren't taught at school because it's not part of the curriculum, and the teachers weren't taught. And let's be clear, governments aren't setting examples either. Governments do the classic, they spend more than they earn. That's why the US is $23 trillion in debt, and corporates as well. But it then comes to as well, and this is my third point, which is, people who are smart with their money then sort of want to evangelize with it. And we want to tell people, and we want to make people better and smarter, because it's not rocket science. This is all quite simple. So we go out there and we tell people about retirement annuities and tax-free savings and costs on investment products and budgeting and all of those sort of things. And then nothing happens. And we become sort of despondent with it. And it's the classic leading a horse to water. You can't help somebody, and somebody's not going to change until they want to. And it's one of the things that Just One Lap. We have the content. It's all there. Everything you need to know about all the things about money is available. And not just One Lap. Hit Google, you're going to find thousands and millions of websites. But first you need to want to do it. And then you need to want to make those changes. And that's the issue, where it's we discover this knowledge, we think we have a superpower, and you want to tell everyone about it. And that is absolutely correct and a wonderful thing. But sitting down, and you mentioned sort of corporates having sessions and stuff, and I've done some of those on both ends. When I worked for a corporate, I would attend them, and I have at times presented them as well. And it's either usually one of two ways. One is where it's sort of compulsory and everyone is there, but no one's paying attention.
No one wants to be.
Or it's not compulsory, in which case hardly no one's there, because they don't want to make that decision, because we think it's going to be horrible. We think it's going to be painful. And initially, it probably is. Initially, it's going to be a budget. And the first part of that budget is going to be almost certainly, you've got too much debt, get rid of the debt, pay it down, make it go away, which means you've got less to spend. But it then very much starts to snowball. I mean, let's say you've got the debt, I don't know, whatever it is, and it's costing you $1,000 a month to pay it off, and you're paying it off diligently. As long as you're not growing the debt, at some point you've finished paying off that R1,000, and now you find yourself in a position where you've got an extra $1,000 a month. Now, should you be saving it? Sure. Should you be saving all of it? Well, no, because that's another point which I think is a crazy finance thing, which is don't forget to have fun. We can get far too much into the weeds around this. And in fact, it was Mark Ashton who said it to me once. Every year at around December time, publications do this, what to do with your bonus. And every year the serious talking heads such as myself and others, dutifully say, well, pay off debt, start with your expensive debt. And then once you've paid off your expensive debt, move on to the cheap debt. And don't forget to save some. And all of that is true. But where's the fun in it? If we make this whole money experience seem just to be a painful experience, then of course no one's going to do it. So if you've been paying off R1,000 debt and that R1,000 debt is gone, first prize, save or invest 1,000 every month. But real prize, save 600, take $400, and once a month go and have a date night or pizzas or burgers or whatever the case is. Because otherwise, we become incredibly successful at this whole money thing, and we save lots of money, and we don't make the mistakes. And then we get to the end of our life and we're incredibly rich, and everyone looks at us with awe. But we've never had fun. My website's called Just One Lap because we get just one lap at life. We can't afford to mess it up. We've got to have fun here as well. So, I talk about the don't buy a house, and I talk about, the trying to change people's mindsets and the like, and all of that. But a part of it needs to be money's about having fun as well. And we just have to find that balance. And often, typically, it's going to be a pendulum, right? We're going to swing far much to the one side, and we're going to go crazy, and we're going to swing to the other side and save every cent. We've got to try and find that balance in the middle and enjoy life. So, you get a bonus at the end of the year. What do you do with it? Well, take a third of it, pay off debt, take a third of it, save it, take a third of it and blow it. For goodness sake, it's year end, it's Christmas, have some fun.
Go on holiday, do something. You're right. Like,
yeah,
it is important, because what is actually the point of ensuring that you have this financial wellness if none of it is going to be used for your own sanity? Do you know what I mean? Like, remember I said we deal with corporate wellness, which is financial, emotional and physical wellness. All those things, like you said, going on date nights or going out for dinner with your family, or seeing your friends, socializing, going away, or doing these things, buying yourself some nice new shoes, whatever it may be. Those are things that contribute, I think, more than people realize, and not in a materialistic way, but in a, I get to do this for myself kind of way. I get to treat myself. I get to do these things that every person should be doing. That contributes so much more to our mental and emotional wellness than I think so many people realize. And it's so closely linked to financial wellness that, they can't be separated. So that's actually a really interesting point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is that we can't separate them, and we need to take that holistic view, which is just one that focuses on money, of course. But truthfully, there are many other areas we could focus on: relationships, health, family, careers. I mean, all of these sort of things. I know people who've turned down big promotions because, big promotion, nice salary, everything lacquer, but suddenly it's 60-hour weeks, and it's like, whoa, hang on. I've got a partner, I've got kids, I've got parents, I've got friends, and 60-hour weeks doesn't jive with that. And yes, I'll be rich, but I won't be seeing anyone, and I won't be having fun, and the job will be terrible. And I suppose what it boils down to is, and this is, that one cliched question, which I've been, oddly enough, asked a lot in the last sort of year or so, is, what do you wish that you had known when you were 16 or whatever age? And it's always the wish I'd started saving and stuff. And that's all true. For me, it's around making what I call conscious decisions. In other words, when I was a teenager and in my 20s and stuff, I was just barreling along. I wasn't actually stopping and pausing for a moment and giving thought about anything: money, relationships,
getting to the next
careers.
day,
to me, it was the next day, the next party, the next fun with friends, the next paycheck, and all of that sort of thing. And to actually stop sometimes and say, well, hang on a moment, where do I want to go? How do I get there? What will enable me? And they're all going to change. They're all going to be dynamic, but to make more conscious decisions. And I think we're a society, and probably with the internets and the social medias, we're a society that just moves so fast. There's very little of that sort of ability to properly sit and reflect and try and figure out, we've got this one lap, what do we plan to do with it?
Yeah. And how do we do it best, It's quite an intimidating thought, but that's why these kinds of conversations but this is exactly why these conversations are important, and those workshops and all these different things that you do in your business. That's exactly why the stuff needs to exist, because it's so cliche, but it's the idea of, you don't want to come to the end of your life, or not even the end of your life, but the end of your life in terms of socializing or whatever it may be, the point where you can't do everything you want to do anymore. You don't want to come to that point and look back and say, okay, cool. It could go either way. It could be, okay, I had so much fun, but now I can't retire in the way I want because I had too much fun and didn't do any saving. But on the other hand, it's like, I did so much saving, I focused so much on my finances that I didn't live my life to the extent that I should have. And I actually don't know which one's worse, but I think they're equally as concerning, so that's actually something
and it is.
But emotional.
So it is that equilibrium. It's finding the middle road. And I appreciate it's very easy for you and I to sit here on Zoom and say, find the middle road. I appreciate it's a lot harder in real life.
It takes long. It can take your whole life to figure it out. It really can. Your whole working easily.
Yeah. And no one had pandemic on their bingo card.
Exactly.
Yet here we are. So stuff happens, but it is, I suppose, in a sense, it's taking more control of that process. I rail against DSTV, 1,000 Rand a month, like, what do you get for it, etc.
Not much.
And my wife and I used to have it, and we haven't for many years. And yeah, streaming has made that actually a whole lot easier. But I know people who no, live football is the most important thing in my life. And I'm prepared, the 1,000 Rand a month, the 12,000 Rand a year. As far as they're concerned, it's worth every cent. And hats off to them. They've sat down, they've looked at the cost, they've looked at the benefit, and they're like, yeah, okay, I get it, but I'm prepared to pay it. I don't care for football. So to me, it was, I Formula One, and I get that on an app, and 5-day cricket. I mean, I miss it, but I'm not paying 12 grand a year to watch a couple of 5-day test matches.
Yeah, you just raised a really interesting point. I think that's something I hadn't really, I thought about it, but again, not in such a formalized structure, is the fact that we also keep speaking about how, people should do this or shouldn't do this, and, going back and forth like that. But these kinds of solutions, if you want to call it that, are also, they have to be individualized, they have to be suited for each, whether it be an individual person or an individual family or an individual business. None of these things will work, exactly the same for every single person. So yes, the idea of taking your bonus and putting it into thirds, that's a fantastic idea. But then what to do with each of those things more specifically might change or might vary. And I think that's what gets difficult, is that even when you have all the knowledge and all the information on what to do, actually implementing it can be so overwhelming, even if you want to, because it's like, okay, but that person said that worked for them, but I don't see how that will work for me. I think this is a lot more complicated than, yes, it's not rocket science, but it's so complex in its own way, because there's so many different.
You're 100% right. And us, the experts, or I'll tarnish myself with that, not you. A friend's son turned 21 recently, and he opened an easy equities account and put 1,000 Rand in. And about, I don't know, 6 weeks, maybe 2 months later, phoned me in a panic and said, I don't know what to do. I've got the 1,000 Rand in there. I don't know what to do. What's this tax-free thing that I hear about? How does that work? But even once he's got that distinction between a discretionary and a tax-free, which in of itself was not a simple thing. Okay, so which ETF do I buy, or which share do I buy? I'm like, well, I know this, intuitively, but to the average person out there, it's not. And that's when I come back to the horse to waters, is kind of when you if someone watching this, if you've got a little bit of knowledge, you've probably got a lot more than the average person on the street. And just kind of let it be known out there that if people have got questions, you're happy to answer. You might not have the right answer. You might not have an answer, in which case you can help and find an expert or something like that. But very much a case of, just let it be known, so that when people open the easy equity account, drop 1,000 Rand in, and then just get stuck with what the heck now, they can come to you and you can say, well, here's an ETF, buy that one. Is it going to make you rich by the weekend? Nope, not at all. But it's a foot in the water, and it starts getting you. I always say to folks, put $100 in and buy something. Buy anything. It almost doesn't matter what, because it's only 100, and it's not going to change your life if it goes south. But it starts that process of at least small things, like how do you actually do the purchasing transaction? How do you then monitor the whatever you've bought in terms of, is it going up or down, and all of that sort of stuff. So it is that complexity, which, and partly it's an industry which is raised on the complexity. They like it because if there's enough complexity, we'll hand over the money to them and they can charge us fat fees and buy German sedans. But it's also is just, we spoiled for choice.
Yeah, it's true. That's true. This is giving me so much to think about. I swear, I'm sitting and I'm like, wow, my brain's going mad. That is, it's a very big and scary world. And I think that just having experts like yourself and websites like yours and all the work that you do, it just makes everything in this aspect of life a little bit less scary, knowing that there are people that can help and can make the right suggestions and help you get to where you need to be. It's just a very reassuring, kind of feeling. So yeah, that's really nice.
Yeah. And then my last of the five is kind of linked to the first of the five, and that is new motor cars. don't do it. And here's why. In a simple sentence, you buy, let's say you can buy a new car for 115,000 Rand. I don't think you can, but let's pretend you could. You buy that car for 115,000 Rand and you say to yourself, this is like, what you've actually got is an asset, well, not even an asset. You've got a utility that's worth 100,000 because the dealer charged you VAT.
Yeah.
So you've paid 115,000, but there's 15 of that thousand is actually VAT.
Yeah.
The loss of the money, you buy that car for 115,000, you drive it out of the dealership, it's probably worth 85,000 and you haven't even done a kilometer of driving yet. If you buy it because you like the new car smell, well, you can literally buy that in a can these days. You go to Amazon, you can literally buy it in a can. And you can, I don't know what that smell is, but if you, and I know that's the excuse that some people have.
Sure,
ultimately,
that's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, a car is a utility. And I appreciate that again, society uses it as a status, as a sort of like a peacock with their feathers. We use it as a way to show ourselves to the world and the like. And I get that. But ultimately, it's utility. And even if you want a fancy luxury German sedan, okay, fair enough. But please don't buy it new. Go and buy I usually, back in the day, until my most recent car, I would buy cars that were a year old, done about 20,000 kilometers or so, and they would cost me, 30-odd% less than the same car that was being bought new. It gave the same utility. It looked the same from the outside. So I'm not saying don't buy flashy cars. I mean, I am. Don't buy a flashy car. But if you have to buy a flashy car because that's how you define yourself, well, at least don't buy a new one. Buy a second-hand one, and then run it for a decade. You you pay off the secret. So my first car, which I bought way back in the 90s, I probably had about a 10% deposit and then I got a loan. None of the balloon finance or anything like that. As soon as the loan's paid off, I start saving some of that money every month. A couple of years, 3 years later, I've built up a big deposit. I've got a trade in. I get a car, but now I've got closer to 50%. And by the time I bought I'm going to count them, 1, 2, 3. By the time I bought my fourth car, I could pay cash for it because I got to the point now where it was, in fact, maybe it was my third or fourth, I forget. But anyway, I was able to pay cash for it because I'd kept the loan small. When cars paid off, I didn't immediately go get a new one. I carried on driving it for as long as possible. And in fact, the only reason I switched out my second car was a horror French car, so I had to get rid of it. Don't buy French. Love the French, but hate their cars. And then my third car, I dinged it, and the insurance wrote it off, which surprised the heck out of me. But anyway, that was their call, not mine. And drive them as long as possible. The cars have got they work forever, but never buy a new one. And everyone knows this, but people still go and buy them. We can see 30,000 odd cars a month are being bought new. And I'm like, but who are these people, man? Go buy the 1-year-old demo car.
That's so interesting because when I got my car, it was also secondhand. It was very much beautiful car, beautiful. Everything about it is magnificent, but definitely secondhand because it's just so difficult to find. As you said, I don't know how people can firstly lay that money out so easily, being able to lay out the money to buy a new car. But it's so similar to what you were saying about buying a house. It's not just because when people look at a house, they say, okay, cool. If I buy it up front, or which even if they don't buy it up front, if I buy a house, it's going to work out cheaper than me renting. And it's like, okay, but that's excluding all those additional costs. It's the same with the new car, as you just said, it's maybe it will be worthwhile. You think it's going to be worthwhile, that doesn't seem like so much money, but then there's all the other factors that factor into it as well. It's crazy, and it's not always necessary. It's not like the secondhand cars in the market are rugged, completely like broken down cars. Majority of the time, you can't even tell that it's a secondhand car. That's the level of cars.
You can get them perfectly good. And the other trick with cars, of course, is that they actually spend most of their time sitting in a garage or a parking bay somewhere, absolutely doing nothing whatsoever. And it's a trend. And it was someone who said it to me many years ago. And then my wife's car was not working, so the mechanic offered her cash for it, and we took it. And we became a one-car family. So we use Uber. And our saving wasn't massive because both the cars were paid for, so there wasn't a monthly installment that we were saving. But these days, particularly, and now of course we have a work from home type of environment, and depending on the flexibility on that, but we've been a one-car family now for about 4 years. And yes, it's easier because I work from home, so there's more flexibility. But it's a case of make a conscious decision rather than just rushing out and buying a car. Is run the numbers. And there was a chap who contacted me on Twitter about a year or so ago, and they moved to one-car family, and he had run the numbers. And on a spreadsheet, the math was beneficial. And he says, in reality, it actually became even better because the number of times you just didn't do the trip because it was a case of, well, I want to pop out and get something, but now I've got to jump into an Uber, so it's going to cost more than okay, nope, not going to do it. So it made him think a lot more about those small trips. What is the cost of a car per kilometer to actually run it? And it's not just the petrol, it's the service, it's the maintenance, it's the tires, it's the licensing, it's the insurance, it's all of that. And when you're doing the Uber, it becomes a lot more, for me to go visit a friend of mine up in Bryanston, $150 each way. Okay, how much do I like him that it's going to spend 300 rand? Is he going to make me really good dinner type of scenario?
Yeah. That's actually a really good point. It's so strange. I've been having such problems with my car for the last 2-3 weeks. My car has, the battery has died twice this week. It died on Sunday and on Monday. Ooh. And all I keep thinking about is, how do people have money to buy a new car and then go through this? Because replacing a battery is expensive. Replacing the tires, there are so many additional costs as it is. So why initially dish out so much more money than what's necessary, Like, what is I don't know. But as you said, often it's a status thing. It's a showing ourselves off to the world in a certain way, But that also
it absolutely is. And that's the same with houses. And partly you'll spot a bit of a trend going through, which is almost the I'm trying to think of a word. The only word that comes to mind is bohemian, but that's not it. The flexible lifestyle is that these things that we collect, and we call them assets, and they're not assets. A house is not an asset; it's a home. A car's not an asset; it's a utility. But we collect all of these things that restrict our choices. Back to my earlier point around, making conscious decisions. And then we want to make that decision. We want to move down to, the KZN South Coast because it's lovely down there. But we can't because we've got this house, we've got these cars, we've got these debt, we've got et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we just simply aren't able to practically do that and to make informed decisions because there's too much other baggage hanging around and impacting us.
That's exactly. It's so much more complicated than I think I ever realized. Like, just getting into these conversations and seeing how it all links together and how everything makes sense. And I think that's also where a lot of the financial issues arise, is that even if it's not a house or a car or a big utility or asset like that, even if it's just day-to-day life, I think a lot of another crazy mistake is the fact that people are so desperate to prove themselves or prove themselves to the world, like in a certain way, like to be seen a certain way or depicted a certain way, that they will knowingly harm their own financial wellness and do things to themselves in terms of their finances in order to gain like recognizable status. That's terrifying. That freaks me out because it's 2022 and people should be more conscious than that. It's I don't know. I don't know. That freaks me out. It really does.
But it is, as I said earlier, no one's teaching us. Societal pressure is real and is heavy. So it is. It's as I always say, it's easy for me and you to sit here and talk about it. It's hard to do, but we need to start taking some steps. And analogy I always used to use is that, like, if you're not driving your bus, who is? If you're not in control of making the decisions, then who is making those decisions for your life?
You've given me a lot to think about, and I really hope that our viewers feel the same way, because these are such common everyday things that we should know, or not even should know, but we should have access to, all these things that we've just spoken about. And I just wanted to say again, Simon, thank you, because you've taught me so much in the last half an hour. You've made me think about these things in a more structured way. things that I've always had at the back of my head, things that I've always considered and known little bits and pieces about, but seeing it all come together and seeing how it all links, it's really useful. And I mean, like I said, I'm at that stage now where I'm looking to move out, and I'm looking to find a house or an apartment or my car's giving me trouble. I might need to get a new car. Do you know what I mean? These are things that are so relevant, not only to me, but to most people, so thank you. We're so grateful to have someone like you here to talk to us, because there's no better person to help us inform our viewers. So thank you, Simon. Thank you so much.
No, always my pleasure. Absolutely my pleasure.
And it was just really nice to meet you as well. But we're just
Likewise.
really grateful. So thank you, and have a beautiful day. And I'm so glad I got to do this talk with you, because I've learned so much, so much.